Oh yeah, you said waiting for like the right time.
Yeah,
The
bro.
right
When it
time.
comes to like getting married in your life, there's never actually a right time. A lot of us will sit here and talk about,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta wait until my finances are perfect and all this, and it's like, but it's life. Nothing is ever gonna line up perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you're already a millionaire, then you can maybe go, oh, well, this is the perfect time for this, and I can plan this out. But like in reality, bro, like none of us have a perfect time for anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things. It's like, what are you waiting for? Because there is no perfect time, especially for the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like the perfect time for the woman is in her 20s. Realistically, if she wants to have kids, the perfect time is in her 20s. And we're probably gonna get I get a whole lot of backlash sometimes with women about this, and it's like y'all saying this now in your 20s, like, oh, I could choose my career and have kids later on, and then when you're in your 30s and you're finding it hard to find somebody and find a spouse,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you do find a spouse, now you're saying that, oh, you guys are having trouble getting pregnant. And then if you get pregnant, now it's a high risk pregnancy because you didn't get pregnant until you was 36, 37. And it's like, yeah, I understand you want to live when you're young and everything, but you can live and still have like a spouse, just
Mm-hmm.
living with them, you growing with them, you loving them. Like, bro, all the people I know right now that got married in their 20s, marriage going strong. Well, with the exception of one, marriage going strong. But the one exception had the one exception I'm thinking of. Well, technically two. Both of them only got married because they got pregnant outside of
Mm-hmm.
marriage.
Right.
And we know shotgun weddings, because of that purpose, are not the solution. They're not typically set up to succeed. So I just encourage you, bro. Like, if you if you really like this one, bro, and she seems like she's the one, bro. Don't wait and hesitate, cause
Right.
yeah, you might be 28, 29. I'm sorry, Rodney. I messed you up when I say 28.
I
You
mean,
might
no, and this is the first time it happened.
you might be 29, but you just said she already 30, so she already up out of her 20s. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if y'all both want kids and everything, like, you got to realize, like, that doesn't necessarily happen when you first get married.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's say y'all get married next year. All right, you're 30, she's 31, and it takes 2 years before she get pregnant. Now y'all having y'all first kid at 34. So I'll just encourage, like, man, like, don't necessarily wait for the perfect time. If it seems like she's the one, and it seems like this is where I'm going with it, pull the trigger.
Right.
Like, pull the trigger on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they say it all the time, bro. Like, you ask David, he said he knew Keisha was his wife when he was in high school. All the men I know that married their wives were able to tell me that, yeah, I knew that I was going to marry her within like the first, I don't know, like 5 minutes of them talking to her or something like that, something crazy. Um, Maybe like 5 dates, whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
like they was going to marry that woman, and it's worked out. It's just something, I guess, inside of guys, like, we know, just like how girls will be like, in the first 5 minutes of meeting a guy, or 5 seconds, they already know if they're going to sleep with you or not. Like, I think it's kind of like the same thing with us. Not necessarily
Right.
sleeping, because I think most guys will sleep with anything,
That's
but
true.
the
Yeah.
marriage thing, like, I think we generally know pretty early on. Like, yeah, this has been therapy sessions with Mike. Advice on
Like,
getting married.
hey, just make sure you tip the secretary on the way out. Leave a check, cash out, money order, or Zelle, whatever you want to do.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Well, we got it, Rock. We are at Dirty 30, man.
Yeah, man.
Dirty 30. Yo, this is dope, man. We are at the 3-0 right now. 3-0. This is episode 30, bro. I'm happy and excited we made it this far.
Nah, for real though. We gonna keep going. Gonna keep going.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, dang, man. It would have been so, I guess, I'm not going to say magical, but it would have been so epic if this would have been the one that got recorded on the cruise. Sadly,
Hey,
it's not. This is a
no.
week before.
I mean, no, we can do 31. We can do 31.
I know, but it almost lined up perfect. But we would have
Yeah,
had to take
almost.
this week off first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which we don't want to do that. You know, we want to be consistent as we're doing this. You know, we got the music on. You know, we got a schedule. You know, it's all good
Amen.
though. It's all good though. It's all good though, man.
So, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Godman podcast. This is episode 30.
Hey, 30.
We have an episode 30, 11 days before I turn 30.
Hey, come on now, man. Hey, man.
Ah, we're your humble and happy guest. Host, not guest.
Oh, man.
This is Mike.
Yeah, you need to go to bed. What up? This your boy Rock.
I've been sleeping all day.
You messing up all the words on the lines, saying guests and hosts and so many other things.
Yes.
He said, "Yeah, that's true. It's true.
All right. Well, y'all. Today, Rodney got a word coming for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely something that's definitely has been festering for sure. You know, Mike, it's been a while since we talked about relationships, and I do feel like a relationship podcast episode needs to be talked about again. Um, yeah, like for example, for today's topic, we're going to talk about idolizing relationships. Um, you know, definitely when it comes to that, I feel like everything, well, everybody does something based off of a relationship status, whether it's posting somebody, whether it's I'm dressing good to impress this person, the fact that I'm single and quote unquote I'm happy being single when I'm not really happy. I'm just doing it just to prove a point or to pretend like I'm happy. So really, especially, you know, people in the church, they definitely idolize relationships a little bit. Um, it's kind of pushed upon a little bit. Not saying that's bad, you know, even oh my gosh, that's crazy how this tied up when we first opened up with this episode today. But yeah, just talking about the idolization of it. I guess what kind of triggered it was
Trigger.
triggered. I feel like that needs to be like a sound that we create, you know, with the different sounds that we have, and just say triggered. Boom. Um, I don't know. I guess leaning to this mic is just really about how, for example, like I think we talked about this in the last episode, where it's like, oh, I'm going to church to find my husband, or oh, hey, I'm going here to find my wife. When that's good and all, that's great that you know you're looking in a good space to find that person, but that should not be your main reason of going. And I definitely feel like, you know, everybody posting, you know, relationship goals and everybody going on trips and, you know, going on dates with their person and really advertising the relationship. It can, like I said, it's really a kind of weird where it's when you're making an idol out of something, it's really taking the place of God on your heart. Where it's like, you know, you probably came across people who are so relationship oriented, where it's like, I gotta have somebody. Like, even if someone who they don't really rock with, someone who's they're not unequally, someone who they are unequally yoked with, but they're settled and they just want to, hey, I just want you to be here just because I need a body. Um, that's definitely a person doing less than God's best, for sure, for sure. Um, let me get your thoughts or opinions on things of that nature. More specifically about how um I guess let's talk about no, in fact, I'm gonna let you pick. I'm gonna let you pick what's on your spirit or what's
No,
on
no,
your
no, no,
mind
no, no,
about
no, no. Give me options.
it. Okay. Okay.
I got distracted. I'm not gonna lie. I found some forces to go by.
Oh my gosh. See guys.
I'm getting off. I'm going back. I'm going back to the pot. I'm sorry.
See So look, when we do video, you can't do this, right?
I'll be looking at the screen.
I'm like we'll edit that out. Like when I get the cameras, we're gonna edit it out. We're gonna edit that out.
I'm not even
Um,
editing this out.
nah, nah. It's about when we do a video. I'm like, okay, let me chop that. Let me get a different angle. Let me put it more on Rodney. But okay, I guess for the topic, let's just talk about. Hmm, let's talk about.
Why people come to church to find spouses, why people idolize the relationship status.
Okay, let's do this. Um, when people think you're single, that means something is wrong with you.
Oh, yeah,
Because
so that's an easy one.
because let's be honest. Like we've been in church, and whoever it was, they be like, hey, so you're pushing 30. Like is everything okay? Like are you dating somebody? I'm like, so yeah, let's talk about more of those lines of in that context.
Yeah, so we as people are social creatures, right? We are we are prone and instinctively driven to finding a partner to mate with on the most basic genetic level, right? Our DNA tells us to find to reproduce and procreate. And we do this typically by matching up and pairing with somebody who we stay with for what's supposed to be for life while raising children and that kind of nature. That's the start of the household. So keeping that in mind, because I want to explain, just a brief history of that, right? To see how we've gotten here. Now, if you're a Christian, you also believe that the Word of God says, man should not. It's not good for man to be alone. That's why He made Eve for Adam, because man by himself wasn't good, and two, he wasn't complete. Eve completed Adam. And so it gives us a model of the household and the family structure and how it's supposed to be built. And in God in the Bible talks about it a lot, about different things with family structure. I think I've mentioned them here before about how like fatherhood is so important, um, particularly in the Word of God, because again we are a reflection of Him, and He is a father, right? But getting back to what we're saying, it's so important for us to come together. We're big on community. We're a community kind of we're a being that's centered around community, not isolation, not loneliness. If you look in the animal kingdom, you have a lot of animals that are by themselves, right? You got stuff like tigers, apex predator, nothing hunts them. They are single creatures. Bears by themselves, things of that nature, right? Then you have things that are in packs, they're communal animals like wolves, lions. They start families and they stay in numbers. You know, anything that's a herbivore basically is going to be in numbers. But I'm speaking of carnivores, like the top of the chain. But we're basically the same. We survive by numbers. We survive in group settings. We survive by community. It's something that's innate to people and innate in our nature. So when someone sees that one of us isn't hasn't been able to find a spouse or isn't looking for it, they assume something must be wrong. Because in the past, typically, if somebody wasn't married by the time they were 30, especially when it came to women, that meant that there was something wrong with them that was hindering them from being able to be found by a spouse or to find a spouse, right? It's like that in different countries now. Like I know in Africa right now, like if a woman's not married, I think by the time she's like 25, they look at her like something's wrong. And if she's not married by 30, in certain places, because I have a friend who's from Congo, and she was like, if the woman's not married by 30, she's basically not getting married. because they look at that and say, yeah, well, something's defective or broken, something's wrong with her, and a man's not even going to give her the time of day now just because of her age, because men want youth. When men want youth, beauty, and all of that vitality and ability to bear children. Which at the top of the show we were talking earlier, and I was telling you about, pulling the trigger if you're thinking about dating this girl because of the children thing. Yeah, well, in your 20s is the best time for women physically to be having kids. So,
Right.
In countries where that's a primary focus, they marry younger. And so I think a lot of the problem and why people think that now is because we're still ingrained in that thought of, well, we're community people, we're family oriented creatures and people. And if you're not starting a family yet by this timeline, then something must be inherently wrong with you.
Yeah.
Now, whether that's correct or not is really just up to interpretation because it varies by culture, right? Now, our culture's been changing over the past, I would say, 15 years to where now we're starting to get married a little older and have kids older and whatnot, or just a lot of us are not having kids at all. Now we can talk about uh, the societal effects that has or whatever at another time. But for now, let's just say and keep it in the family sense of the term right now, about what impact that waiting is having on people in the community and whatnot. It's definitely changed the dynamic of dating, and it's changed the dynamic of a household because now everything has become so centered around money primarily that people are waiting longer to get married and things of that nature. And then a lot of things in culture right now are pushing people towards waiting later. For example, a lot of this, and people are going to hate me for this, but the female empowerment movement, right? Um, we'll say women empowerment movement, right? It's crazy. Some of it's kind of crazy, where it's like, oh, sexual liberation, and all this, and there's no such thing as being a slut, and it's like, words have meanings. There is such thing as there definitely is such a thing as being a slut or promiscuous in that nature. And some of the effects of that are, if we're gonna be in a society where everyone is deciding we're gonna be promiscuous and do all of these things, then there's gonna be a stigma about women in a certain age group who are doing that. So if everyone in the 20s is being promiscuous, and then you're going to have guys go, well, I'm not marrying any of these women right now. Because at this end of the day, no matter how much you want to change it, the way a lot of men think, and it's kind of been built innate into us, is I don't want a girl that has had experience with 12 different people. I don't want a girl that has had a lot of partners. Most men ideally would want that number to be 0. Now, again, it's not fair to ask for something you can't offer, but that's just the reality of things. Most guys don't want their girl to have a lot of partners. And because of that, you're seeing now a lot of times guys don't want, there's a lot of guys that don't want to marry within this age range. And there's a lot of girls that don't want to marry because they're having their fun or whatever, or they're saying, I'm going to choose career over family because the way the system's set up or the way our structure of our country set up, it encourages them to have to choose one or the other and not both. So that's my take on it and why that's being said. And probably we hear that sometimes, oh, there's something wrong with you or whatever. And I just went down a very long tangent about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's you, so you're a talker, so I knew you was about to go deep with it. So it's all good. It's all good.
Back to these forces. Joking.
But is he though?
Yes.
Okay. Nah, that was good. That was really good insight on what you were saying. How, it is with culture, and we are um more sociable than, you know, that was really interesting for real. Even like by the age of, I know you say in certain countries or certain um beliefs and cultures, how if by 25 is like you need to get around that bracket. If you're 30, that's when they kind of look at you as like, okay, something must be up with her because she ain't married yet and things of that nature. Um, so yeah, so the next thing I want to discuss and really talk about next is the. I guess I want to go into the because I guess I want to talk more of like from the. Okay, let's talk about this. Dating somebody just to date somebody. Um, Pretty much from the point of view where it's like you're settling, just because you don't want to be single.
Oh
So
Lord, hold on. Right.
okay, so yeah, so next I want to talk into one of the things I see when it comes to the idolization of relationships is you date just to date, aka dating with no intentions. The fact you just want to have somebody there. Um, I do think we get to a point of desperation and loneliness when we do date somebody. It's just for that person that who you can just a post, who you go on dates with, you lay up with them, but you don't really like that person. You just like the fact that you're in a relationship, and that's definitely a wrong way of doing things because that's not what God intended to do. And so I definitely do just want to get into it. Hold up. So I had to adjust my headphones. I was getting a little delay in it. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, when it comes to things of that nature, I just want to talk about that because even me, I've been guilty of that where no, I dated somebody just to date them, not really care if if no, do we get along, if we're equally yoked, or what's your intentions and things of that nature. And then it's really causing more friction, more damage, more than anything. And like how you said about earlier before, Mike, when the podcast first started, where it's wasting time.
Mm.
And then yeah, because like I've definitely, like I said, I definitely do have friends who I'm very close with, and they do date men just because they just don't want to be single, or my personal favorite, like you hit that one person on Valentine's Day, you ain't hit them no more times throughout the years or throughout the month, but when that one day comes, you be like, hey, what you doing? You want to go out? And that does happen. That does happen where you kind of just be with somebody just to be with somebody, but never really have that depth, that intentionality for real. Um, and like I said, that's really dangerous to do that. And I think that's the whole point why I did want to do this episode was because that's not how God intended for relationships to be. Relationships are meant. I think they're meant to be a good motivation, but not to be an idol. Anytime you take things as an idol, it will take the place of God and it will replace him. Now let's not forget, God did invented marriage, and that's the whole point of dating is to get married. But if you are misusing that just for your own recreational usage for loneliness, for depression. You're using that to fill a void. You're misusing the formula, the main thing that God created it for. So, yeah, I just definitely want to touch on of misusing it, how, especially like on the emotional aspect, Mike. Let's talk about when you're misusing relationships, just to have your own satisfactory.
Oh, now we're talking about being toxic.
For sure, hands down. Let's no, yeah. Let's about being toxic, toxic a little bit.
Okay, so you said a lot right there, right?
hmm
You said a lot to unpack there.
Okay, let's
So
go.
the first thing I think I want to hit on is the dating just to date and
hmm
not for a purpose. And we see a lot of this in the world,
hmm
right? People date just for dating status or whatever, or just to say they, I'm lonely, so I want to date somebody kind of deal, right?
hmm
Now, I'm not gonna say I completely disagree
Mm-hmm.
with dating because, well, I'm kind of lonely. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you might find your spouse that way. I mean, you're kind of looking, but you don't know you're looking. But as believers, right? The purpose of us dating should be to find our spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not dating to find your spouse, like you said in the beginning, you're just wasting time. You're wasting your time, but mainly you're wasting the other people's times who are trying to find a spouse while you're just playing games. Um, and as far as the dating for, just like the emotional reasons and everything, I think this is why it's so important for us to, one, have the emotional intelligence before heading into anything like that, but two, making sure you yourself are ready for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because dating can be a very emotional, not can be, it is very emotional because you're dealing with somebody else and your emotions towards them and theirs towards you and different things that may happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that you should have yourself taken care of to a certain extent first. Now, I'm not going to say everyone's coming into a relationship perfect because that goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's no perfect time or there's no perfect situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to have all your stuff worked out. But there are some major things that you should have taken care of within yourself before you try to seek out a relationship and seek out emotional support from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Definitely for
If,
sure.
like, if you have issues still with a bunch of past relationships and everything, and you still scarred and hurt and traumatized, but you're just ready to jump in because you think it's going to fix you,
Mm-hmm.
then you shouldn't be dating. You should go see a counselor.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I think a lot of the times, emotionally, people jump into relationships for things that they need to go see a therapist for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what causes more hurt. It
Mm-hmm.
causes more harm, not just to you, but now you're hurting the other person as well. And it just makes things worse.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. Yeah. And I think sometimes you do need to, and I really hate how I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes you don't know you have a problem until you see what you're doing in that relationship and what you're doing to that person. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't know the issues that I have in my mind. I don't think I got no issues. I feel like I'm good. I'm thinking, you know, that they tripping. But then when I'm seeing the same steps were repeated in other relationships, that's when I had to evaluate myself and step back. I'm like, yo, do I normally do this a lot? And that's when you got to be honest and you got to be humble and tell yourself, like, your poop is not gonna smell like roses. Like, you're definitely gonna have to. What, you laughing at what I said?
Because it just reminded me of
Outcast
that
song.
Outcast song. Yeah, roses. Oh my goodness.
Mm. You gonna put it on your playlist next after you get off the podcast, ain't you?
Nah. Surprisingly, no.
Surprisingly. But now, Mike, that's really good for I think people do go into relationships not thinking. Well, I mean, well, let's be honest. Like, we weren't never really taught the formula of relationships and why we're supposed to date. Um, Sometimes, and I heard like Michael Todd say this, how like I don't understand how people can date for 15 years and have kids and they don't want to get married. For them, that's it. And for me, don't get me wrong, like I always thought marriage was always a goal for me for sure. But sometimes we do have certain individuals and people when they date just to because like they date just to date. Like there's nothing more than what's going on right now, and they're fine with it. So it's like, definitely evaluating and see what's the purpose of dating. Like I say, it's the goal. Like, what is your goal of relationship? And sometimes we get into these things not having a goal. You know, 9 times out of 10, it's a it's a fleshly thing, but not a purpose filled thing. Like a relationship, it brings purpose and supposed to be an example of Christ in the church. But you don't really see that nowadays, where people don't relate relationships to God. They normally view relationships compared to Beyonce, Jay Z, Rihanna, and ASAP. Who else? Mike, give me another great um, couple goals person. I know
Oh,
you probably know two or three.
you just had to bring up Rihanna and ASAP, huh?
Got to, man. Look,
Everybody is still hurting. I'm just joking, but
look. I'm like, oh, you can make two babies. You can make no album. Okay, okay.
well, I'm not waiting on the album for her. I don't know why everyone is. But anyway, getting back on topic.
Back on topic.
Is other people relationship goals? I'm not sure. I think as far as us in our community, it's mainly the Beyonce Jay Z thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's the main one. Because if you
Hmm.
look, bro, like all these people that they kind of, a lot of people try to idolize, and that's another thing. That's where it goes back to the idolatry part of
Hmm.
idolizing relationships. Bro, look at all these relationships and how much of them don't last.
It's a lot. I remember it was like 1 month. I forgot what it was, but it was like
People were saying a long time
divorce.
they wanted to be like Will and Jada. Look at that now. You still want to be like Will and Jada?
I don't want to be like Will.
I for dang sure don't want to be like Will.
I don't want to be like Will. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was like, never mind. I'm good. I take it back.
He hurt.
Hurt. Man, talk about stress. That dude became a meme on the Red Table Talk.
And then became a meme after that. He's become a few memes. But like
Mm-hmm.
again, it's like that's the problem with idolatry
Mm-hmm.
and looking at what somebody else has and saying that's what I want. I have to have it. It has to be just like that. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not the way God intended for you to be. You're not supposed to be wanting what everyone else. No, you should want what God has for you. What
Mm-hmm.
God has for you is different than what God has for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Nah, for real. I'm not, and it's exact. No, and I say I like how you said that. That's really dope. Like what God has for you is for you. I think we can admire the significance of it. I think I think people fall so much in love with the idea of the relationship or the great significance it is to be with that one. And I think just because we see that being highlighted, we automatically I'm stuttering. What's going on? The devil don't want me to speak. So we automatically gravitate towards what's being shown and we think that's a relationship. That's how it's supposed to be. I want that. But then it's like that can't be yours because that's not you. Like, and like I said, that's just a picture what's in front of a lens. You don't know what's going on behind closed doors what these couples go through. Like let's for example, the I'm gonna use this. So the whole Chris Brown and Rihanna situation, when everybody thought they was the cutest couple, thought they was great together, and like that was goals for real. That's who they wanted to be with. But when Chris Brown put out his documentary, he talked about the situation and what really happened and where it was jealousy, it was fights, it was to the point where what was being shown in front of the camera was not really what was going on. Like you got people who really are dealing with stuff to make relationships work. And I think that's why the divorce rate is so high in America is because nobody wants to go through the hard things no more. It's a reason why New Edition made the song Can You Stand the Rain? Like it's easy to love somebody when the sun is shining. It's easy to love somebody when y'all kicking, laughing, making food together, having sex, watching movies, having a great time. But then it's like, where's the endurance in love when someone lost their job, so now you are the provider in this? What do you do when you find out like, oh shoot, I don't know how we're gonna pay this rent? Like oh shoot, the cancer is back. What are we gonna do? It's hard to still keep that love and that endurance in there, but if it's God ordained, He'll make a way to make sure both of you two can stand in the storm because He's there with you and make it through that storm.
And I'm glad you said that. God ordained. If it's meant, if God, if you, it's like I said a few weeks ago when we were doing this, and I compared it to like that welding, right? And you have to have it centered around God.
Hmm.
If you build your relationship just around love, it's like, well, tough luck. Because guess what? Love fades.
Hmm.
Love is fleeting. You can try. You can build your relationship around love, but love does not necessarily keep a relationship together when y'all going through it, because y'all might not love each other for like a minute. Everyone has seasons you go in and out of, and I think that's part of the. I think that's another part of the reason with the divorce rate. Like I said, the divorce rate thing is like a. It's a multi-layered conversation on explaining that one, but I think that's part of one of the reasons is we have gotten into this Disney era. And what I mean by that is, Disney has all the cute little, oh, this person's in love, these people are going to work out and everything by the power of love, thing with their movies. Like let's see, Little Mermaid. Oh,
Hmm.
you renege on a contract. But or you sign a bad contract because love, because you letting your emotions control you, and then you want to renege on it, but somehow it automatically works out in the end because love overcomes. No, that's not how it works.
At all.
That's not how that works at all. Or well, this in Aladdin. Well, I love this girl, so they're gonna change the rules, and she's gonna be able to marry someone that's not a commoner. I'm sorry to tell you that that's not how that works in the real world. Like in the real world, love does not conquer and solve all the problems. It does not overcome everything.
Hmm.
You have to build things on more than just that love and the idea of it. I think that's a lot of the problems. Like I said, we're in this Disney world right now where everyone just has this idea of this is how it's supposed to be in this fantasy of love and all that. And I think a lot of people have forgotten the teachings or didn't learn the teachings from their parents of, yo, this ain't about love. This is also about work. This is about doing this because this is my job. Like one thing I love is fences, right?
Hmm.
I think you know where I might be going with this, right?
I do. Yeah.
So in fences, and Denzel did it great, but I love the original, the stage play for it.
Oh, with James Earl Jones.
When James Earl Jones was sitting there and he's telling them like, I do all of this not because I like you. Like, what does that have to do anything? I
Hmm.
do all this because it's my job to do this.
Hmm.
It's my job to do what I'm supposed to do as your father. And same thing goes. It's my job to do certain things if I'm going to marry you and I'm going to be your husband. It's my job to do this. And if you get that in your head, then those times where it's like, man, I don't even like this girl anymore. I can't stand her. I really don't love her like that anymore.
Mm.
But if I know in my heart, yo, regardless of how I feel right now, this is my duty, this is my job and my responsibility, and I'm going to make sure it gets done. You're going to be able to weather through those storms. You're going to be able to weather through that time.
Yeah.
Versus if I have the idea of, this ain't got nothing to do with, man, this ain't really my job. Like, she can take care of herself. She a big girl. Oh, well, guess what? Y'all headed towards disaster now.
Cause she
Because
don't want to
now
hear
that,
that.
yeah, now that one little thing that was holding y'all together, which was, oh, the power of love. What's that doing now?
Hmm. Driven off the emotion. Because if you make emotions your anchor, that's what's really gonna make it crumble. Cause and like I said, Mike, so I'm gonna use the same thing like how you said. When you say it's my job and it's my duty, cause you have a strong enough why on, and it's through that why you are able to push through. You're able to get the tasks and duties met because you know that's the role as a husband you're gonna play, or a boyfriend if we're talking about dating. But say if I replace that anchored why and replace that with my anchored love. If I don't feel like doing it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not gonna do it. Like that's the difference between even if when you have a strong enough why in your disciplined relationship, you're still gonna persevere even if you don't feel like doing it. But if you do it based off of your emotions, it's gonna waver. It's gonna fluctuate. You're gonna say, "Hey, forget this. I'm gonna do me and focus on me," and that's really where most relationships fail at. It's because they're so busy focusing on themselves and not focusing on the greater good of the relationship and what it can produce. If you don't have no outside picture, and that's why I say goal, the key word is goal. If you don't have a relationship goal on what we're together for, it's gonna crumble every time.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I
true.
think I think that's why we say you got to keep God in the center because He's the one who's going to lead you. He's the one who's going to make sure things persevere. But if we do it based off our own, like I said, our own feelings, they fleet. I don't feel like doing this. But like I said, I do love that part in Fences when you mentioned when James Earl Jones when he says like I do because it's my responsibility. I don't have to like you to do it. That's just my job. That's what I got to do. And that's really the true differences. Even though it's harsh, don't get me wrong. Nobody really wants to hear that. But the significant part is like you're still doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes that's like another thing about the hard work in relationships. Like you're gonna do things that you don't feel like doing. But in order for it to survive, to see the test of time, you're gonna have to do things that will make it work. But nobody wants to hear that. This is just me. Like I was definitely tricked. I thought relationship was gonna be all puppies and rainbows and giggles and all that stuff. Until I find out if I didn't take out no trash, if I find if I find out I picked up the wrong food, it's gonna be hell. Ain't no puppies and rainbows. I'm like, what's this? And this is real life. But that's why I say like it's important who when God joins two people who He wants together. Because don't get me wrong, you're gonna bicker, you're gonna have moments. That's no problem. But when you two know each other so well, even when you go through your little fights and your spats, you're still gonna find a way to restore and God's gonna redeem what is going on. But like I said, no relationships nowadays, just because how I mentioned before, when people idolize the idea of relationships, it's easy for them to break apart because when real things come about, they can't face the storm. Because if you go into a relationship easy, you're gonna break up just as easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like I say, like, and we always talk about this, Mike. When a man pursues. Like, if he felt like he didn't like you, he'll just keep you. He'll let you walk. He'll let you do these other things. But if he keeps in putting the work in, putting in effort to take you on dates, to pray with you, to make sure you do Bible studies together, to make sure you're up on your workout plans, make sure you're budgeting, make sure you're saving, making sure, is your mental health together? Is you emotional? Like, you need to go to the store. If he's putting in the work to pursue, he's going to put in the same work to sustain the relationship. No, many people can get the relationship, but can we sustain the relationship? That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother. That's a whole nother. Oh man, that's a whole nother ball game right there. But that's really truth though. That's really true. So I really want people to understand that we can't idolize relationships because number one, it's an idol, it's taking the place of God. But also number two, we have to realize, like how you said, Mike, it's not puppies and rainbows all the time. It's not a Disney movie. It's something that really does require faith and work. And how the Bible says, without faith, without work is dead. That relationship is going to die if you don't apply aliveness to that faith. I don't know if aliveness is a word, but I'm using it today. If you don't add life to that, if you don't put work with that faith, that relationship is going to be alive. It's going to grow.
Right. I want to just read something real quick. I know, by the way, we've gotten definitely off the rails on this because we were talking about like the idolatry of marriage,
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and all that. But while we're on the topic of like people building their thing on love, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to read a couple things that they're just looking things up right now, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's we know that there's about half of relationships and marriages in a divorce right
Mm-hmm.
now, right? And I'm looking right now and reading about this, and so is it normal for people to fall in and out of love with their spouse, right? I'm going to quote this. Relationships can be difficult at times, and it's not uncommon for couples to find themselves losing romantic feelings and facing the decision of whether or not to remain together or separate. It is normal for relationships to change over time, and that sometimes includes losing feelings for the person you're with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Divorce, it happens in approximately one or two marriages. The number has fluctuated, and although we are currently seeing fewer divorces, many people still choose to divorce over working out their marriage. Roughly half of divorced couples say they split up because they fell out of love with their partner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's roughly 25% of relationships end in divorce over falling out of love with their partner. But if that, because that's the foundation of what you built your relationship on, was love.
Mm-hmm.
If you built it on something stronger, then it might not happen. See, I think the problem is we don't, instead of building the relationship on a foundation of like a rock, right, which would be Jesus in this point of God, right? You build it on something soft as sand, which would be your heart. Your heart fluctuates and changes. Your heart is very soft. You know, there's a saying that there's a thin line between love and hate.
Mm-hmm.
Things can flip around just that quickly. And just as much as people are falling out of love with each other, though, I want to read something else because there's a catch to it, right? Not a catch, but there's a good side to this. You can go to therapy for this. People go to therapy for relationships and falling out of love all the time because, again, over time, we as people grow and you can grow separate. So, someone asks, is it possible to reignite the spark? And the therapist answered, with time and effort, you and your spouse can fall back in love again. Therapists often see couples facing this very dilemma after years and years together. One of those, one or both parties no longer feel as in love as they were before. However, they can fall back in love with time and effort. There are different things that they can be doing. So I would just encourage people, like, don't make love the reason that you're in relationship with somebody, because ultimately that's not a good enough reason.
Mm.
It's just not.
Yes, it's not. It's not. Yeah, definitely got to put that work in. I mean, because even through the hard stuffs, and I know we talked about this with David when, say, for example, and I said, I know we're just talking about, well, I guess marriage does fall into this, but let's say through the hard stuff, like with David, when we talked about if infidelity happens, let's talk about in marriage.
How did we
I,
get down this road?
um, anyways, it's like, so do you feel like, what do you think? What type of work would have to happen in a relationship when infidelity has happened?
That's a tough one because I can't see myself getting cheated on again. Because
Mm,
I've gotten to a point now in my mind I'm a little too crazy for that.
okay.
But in order to, I mean, infidelity is like the ultimate breach of trust.
Mm-hmm.
So, goodness, Ronnie, you asked me to do therapy, and I don't even have my bachelor's yet. I would imagine that the first thing that has to do, first off, is obviously forgiveness has to happen, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
second thing is you have to go down a long road to regaining the trust that you have lost.
Mhm.
Like you lost the trust that that partner had in you when you cheated. So now there's a long road to coming back of you having to get that trust back. And then for that's first and foremost. And then secondly, you've got to be able to make up for the fact that you betrayed them. Like
Mhm.
betrayal hurts. People, like people don't necessarily get over betrayal easy, and they. I'm not saying they should either. Like that's not a good feeling. You know what I mean? So I would say in order to do that, first you have to work on regaining trust, and I mean, I don't know,
Mhm.
acts of service, gifts, whatever. I don't know. Whatever that partner's love language is, boy, you better keep that on cloud 9.
Nah, 'cause one thing about a woman, she will not forget. She will not forget.
But same thing for a dude. So like we always look at it from that one way, right? Oh, the dude cheats on a woman. Do you know how it feels for a dude to to be in a marriage and been cheated on? Like they don't ever talk about that part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I say this, guys. Normally, we can't dish what we hand out. Like it's this. I think it was a song that I heard from one of my artists. How he said, pretty much, he said how women bend, but men break. So it's like the things that we do to a woman, such as like cheating, lying,
Hey man,
manipulating.
hold on. I'm gonna stop you there real quick. Hey,
What?
let's this weed thing, nah, bro. Like we as men, first off, is not cheating is not a man and woman thing. All right, so let's not say it's something that we as men hand out. No, wait a second. We as men don't hand out anything. This is a bipartisan issue, sir.
Okay.
This is a bipartisan issue. Both
Okay.
sides do it,
So
and in
okay,
fact,
yeah.
they say
So
women do it more.
okay, so disclaimer. Everybody's capable of doing this. I'm a little side note, disclaimer. Everybody is capable of doing this. Now back to our regular schedule program. So majority, if a man does something to a woman, especially if it happened multiple times, she becomes, she's hurt for sure, but she endures it. But vice versa, if she did the same thing to me, it hurts twice as deep because we kind of don't expect for our person to do that. And like, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but a good portion, like if dang, what did Joe say? Like what if a woman was just like you? Like, what if a woman was just like you? Like, for it would definitely hurt twice as deep because we didn't think, oh, sweet Samantha. Nah, Samantha, that's my baby. Nah, she won't be out there. Dang, I forgot this is the Godman podcast. She would not be out there being highly promiscuous. I
I
trust my
mean,
baby.
yeah,
I
she
know
out
my
there
baby.
hoeing.
Hmm? I
She out
I
there hoeing.
I know she would never do that. No, she her nah because like they have this image as of it's impossible. She can't do that because she loved me too much. Hey, it's because she does love you. That's probably why she doing that because she was driven to that point to do that. And so, yeah, like
I
yeah,
don't know, bro. You still using blaming language. Wait a second. Let's
mm-hmm,
not driven. Not driven. She made the decision. People make
mm,
bad decisions. They ain't got nothing to do with the other person. Sick of that narrative. Oh well, when it comes to a woman, you had to drive her to do something. Like nah, she a grown woman, so you didn't drive her to do nothing. She made the decision to make her decision. Just like a woman don't drive a man to cheat. That's the whole thing. That's the
mm,
thing I'm keep like sidetracking about Rodney
yeah,
is
mm,
like we don't even realize sometimes the language we're using when we're talking about stuff like this because the narrative been so long that when it comes to this kind of stuff, men are just evil dogs and women are always the victim with this. And it's like nah, like saying he drove her is basically saying she's still a victim even though she committed the crime.
Because I feel like it can go both ways as well. And like I said, not saying, man, 'cause I don't want to say, okay, fine. So even though I did say driven, but it's one of the things like tired of being sick and being tired, which doesn't give no excuse for a person to do what they're doing. It's not an excuse for it, but in their own minds, they feel like they was painted into a corner to do so, and they looked for that outlet and that opportunity to do so. So like I say it's not that person's fault, and I'm talking about the partner who is not measuring up to the person's expectations. Um, but there are situations where if needs are not met or attention is not in this certain area, a person will go somewhere else to find it. And like I said, it does not make an excuse. And like I said, definitely not a man thing or a woman thing, but definitely like when we do when we have this vision of I know this person will not do that because they love me too much to not do so. But once it happens, that's what shatters that person.
Mm.
Because you're right, we are definitely way off topic, but I like where it's going though. I like where it's
Way
going
off
though.
topic, yeah.
Way off topic, but I like where it's going though because it's like it's getting to the nitty gritty of what's under the surface for sure, for sure.
All I'm saying is hold the perpetrators accountable. We hold men accountable for this stuff, but we make excuses for the women and somehow find a way to blame the men. Like, nah, hold anybody who does anything like this accountable for their actions. Like, no one, there's no drove anyone to do anything or put you and made you feel like this or backed you in a corner. Because you make your own decisions. Like, there's nothing to do with me. All right, if you saying that because you didn't feel like I loved you good enough in a relationship that you had to go cheat, like we couldn't go to counseling, we couldn't sit down and have a conversation, you couldn't just break up with me, you had to
Right.
go and step out and cheat. Like, come on.
I mean, like I said, that's the easy route to take. You know, that like I said, nobody
Then
wants
if
to.
that's his own up to it though. Like that's all I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
don't make excuses. Take accountability for yourself. And everyone else hold people accountable for this mess and don't make excuses for them. Like, it's just amazing to me how
hmm
in these kind of scenarios the women get the free pass almost by society, and it's a well, what did he do? Like, what do you mean? What did he
hmm
do? She the one that cheated.
hmm
She's the perpetrator here. What does this have to do with what he did? Maybe yeah, he could have been better for something in a relationship, but at the end of the day, like
hmm
that doesn't give her a pass.
right.
Anyway,
hmm
back to what you were saying.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Trying to think without you, but trying to see. Let me go over my notes a little bit. Okay, let's talk about the finding. Let's talk about. Let's talk about why it's important to have a relationship with a goal. Let's say that because I do feel like when we look at these relationships, we're only looking at it from what we see from our point of view. You know, say if me and you look at a relationship, let's say, hey, Rodney likes this relationship because I like the way how she submits to him. Or you may say, hey, I like that relationship because I love how they communicate. So let's just talk about on how important it is to look at healthy relationships. I do feel like we do witness a lot of how we say it, toxic relationships, and that's mostly broadcasted and viewed. But let's talk about the importance of looking at a healthy relationship and definitely You want to be covered, and you want to be mentored under a godly marriage. Let's talk about your opinions and your thoughts on that.
Right. So that's very key and important, right? So I even for people that are unbelievers, I believe that principle still applies. When you get into something like a marriage, you should be having someone who is like a seasoned veteran in that, with a healthy relationship, to be able to counsel you. I mean, like in everything, like even at your jobs, bro, right? No matter how good you are at your job, there's always somebody that has more experience than you. Someone that's better, and you find and you link up with them. Why? Because they're going to be able to tell you things that you missed. They're going to be able to tell you, to advise you and to help you. They're going to pour wisdom out into you. You do this in every other part in life. You should still be doing it in marriage as well.
Hmm.
Like in as far as like you being, a believer, you should definitely be seeking out advice and counseling from other believers who've been doing this longer than you. You know, especially like let's say you got a couple you and what I love, right? The older couples in the church, like some of them that are like elders and all that now. So they've been married together 40, 50 years. That is a that is just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom just sitting there for you to access. I think the problem is a lot of people have pride
Hmm.
and feel like they can work everything out and don't need to ask for help for anything or advice. But we should always be trying to get better. Like, if you look at it, one of the things as men, Rodney, right? How many
Hmm.
times we heard this? You should never be the smartest man in the room, which is like contrary to belief. People think, well, you want to be the smartest. No, you should never want to be the smartest person in the room, because if you're the smartest person in the room, you can't learn.
Hmm.
You always want to surround yourself with people who know more than you so they can pour into you.
Right.
And I think this is really going to be the same thing with the marriage thing. Like, you should always want to surround yourself with couples that have something to pour into you. Like, you don't want to be like necessarily the oldest couple that and y'all only been together for 10 years,
Hmm.
for example. Now, I mean, obviously, when you get to the end of the spectrum, when you're up there and you've been married for 50 years, then yeah, like you're not getting help from anyone anymore. You've already done the race.
Hmm.
But when you're not like that, like you should always want somebody in the room to be that can pour into you and that can help you with these things. Because, bro, stuff's gonna happen. Bro, look how many marriages still end during that first 5 years of a marriage.
Right.
Like, that's crazy to me. That tells me y'all never should have got married to begin with.
You got to throw the towel in.
Y'all threw the towel in after 2 years. Bro, y'all were dating with tax benefits. That's all that was.
Hmm.
Because you were never really married.
Right.
Not if it took 2 years for you to really get divorced. Now, obviously, there are some circumstances where it's different, right? But like for me, for the most part, like it shouldn't be a case of like that, because clearly you weren't ready. One or both parties wasn't ready to be actually married. And I think it's also important to understand what marriage actually is. And I don't know if we should really be going further into that without bringing somebody who's actually in there
For sure.
on to speak about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. But yeah, it's definitely important to be observant and definitely be vigilant on the successful relationships, because especially like the ones who definitely has put in years into the relationship, and because they've been through tests, they've been through trials, and they're able to teach, they're able to guide, they're able to instruct and give their wisdom and their advice on the things they went through in their relationship. So when you're able to observe and take notes, you can apply that to your relationship and try to make that work. So I definitely do think that is important when you are trying to look at a successful relationship for sure.
Hmm.
Um, definitely trying to think what else. I don't know, Mike. Let you pick something, man. I feel like I did it enough picking the topics. Let's see if you can probably come up with something.
Dog, if I come up, we've gone off schedule so much already.
Don't we always?
I mean,
that's
we
what
are, bro.
that's
We are
what makes
already,
us us.
bro. We are already an hour and 5 minutes in.
Okay, okay. Well,
As far as
let's do one more, then we can wrap up.
all right, look, as far as the topic for today of relationships and like the idolatry of them and whatever, like I think that one thing that we should be very aware of are intentions. I know we hit on this basically throughout the whole podcast, but I just want to make it clear. You should be aware of the intentions of the other person and why they're dating or coming into a relationship with you, and as well be very aware of your own intentions. Because sometimes we don't even realize that there are underlying intentions in some of the actions that we do because, let's say we haven't necessarily healed over something. So we're like, oh, I'm ready. I can be in a relationship. I love this person, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, there's an underlying intention that you're not even aware of you're using this person to cope with something, you know? And one other thing, speaking of relationships, right? This is for all the people out there that are waiting until marriage. Sex should not be a reason that you get married or get into a relationship. I understand it is hard waiting out here, especially with all the way culture goes with this hyper sexualized society we live in. But sex is even worse than sex might be the worst thing to build a relationship on because sex gets old really quickly. um that should not be the reason that you get into a relationship with somebody or get married for that matter because, oh well, man, I just can't wait anymore, I got to do. All right, well, it says in the word is word it's better to marry than to burn with a passion, right? However, that shouldn't be the reason you getting married. See, now I believe when Paul was referencing that was referencing, especially if you apply it to current day, well, we're already dating, and now I'm getting to a point where we just can't wait. We just got to have each other. Well, how long y'all been dating? Y'all already ready to get married? Well, then fine, go get married. Like, there shouldn't be any more reason to wait. But, oh man, I've been dating her for 3 months and I just got to have her. I can't do it anymore. No, that's a self control issue, fam. You don't need to be getting married yet.
No, for real though. Yeah, it definitely is a control issue with that because when you can't make the barometer of your relationship based off of the sexual things because like how you said, eventually sex does get old fast, and that's where that intimacy, not on a sexual aspect, from a chemistry aspect, when you got that chemistry, that connection, where if y'all like the same things, y'all like doing the same things, you continually date your partner, that will put an everlasting effect on a relationship, which will outlast anything that anybody in this world try to present to you for real. So that's my thoughts and my opinions on that matter for real.
Mm-hmm.
Well, y'all, I think that was a good episode today when we talk about the idolization of relationships. I do think this was a great episode for us to hit that number 30, that dirty 30 right there. For sure, for sure. This was a great episode. I really hope that y'all took great notes. Hope that y'all are able to really pick, identify, and definitely apply this to your life where we want y'all to be successful in relationships that God has for you when it comes to your wife, when it comes to your husband, when it comes to you being the best mother, the best father you possibly can be. Everything starts right here, right now, when God is able to speak to you through us, through this podcast. So you're able to do exceedingly and abundantly in this thing called life. When listening to the Godman podcast, um, if you want to connect with us, we are available on social media. You can find us on the Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on TikTok. And we're also on YouTube as well, if you want to listen to us on there as well. Mike, is there anything you want to say before we close out?
Be blessed, saints.
Hey,
We
you heard
love
from the man
y'all.
himself.
Again, y'all can reach us at thegodman@gmail.com with any and all questions. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, there's a question that gets posted with the episode. Feel free to answer.
Yeah,
We definitely want the feedback. We definitely want the feedback, and we definitely want to interact with all of you.
we do. We definitely do. If you comment nice things. Also, I forgot, man. Make sure you share the podcast. Make sure you share, like, comment, subscribe, and let people know what we're doing, man. We're trying to spread the gospel, so
Yeah,
and definitely
sharing
in a
is caring.
sharing is caring in the most funniest, hilarious, most blunt way as possible. Cause Mike is the blunt one. I'm the one that's more, yeah, easygoing, and Mike just goes for the jugular.
We're gonna have some fun ones for you guys coming up. Like
Woo!
we plan on recording a few of them on the cruise with hopefully with a bunch of other people. Some fun things coming, some fun topics, some quiz trivia episodes and whatnot. Just having some fun and everything. So we're gonna break away from some of the seriousness and heaviness that we've been on for the past like month or two. Like I don't know why we've been so serious lately.
Yeah, yeah, we
I
gotta have
feel like
fun. We
we
gotta
need
have
another
fun.
shenanigans.
Oh my God, we do shenanigans. Yo, we should do shenanigans on the cruise. Okay, we should do that. Shenanigans for sure.
Yeah.
Cause I might have
But
gained some
until then,
shenanigans on the cruise.
be blessed, everybody.
Yeah, see y'all. Yee.